Yes, we will be. We will be also streaming live on YouTube as of now. So hello to the YouTube live stream. We are also recording tonight's session. The recordings will be on our YouTube channel sometime next week. I think an email blast will go out when that happens. So if you miss anything, you have to sign out early. You can always cycle back and check out the recording. Cool. Last night, we also had a couple people who said their birthday was going to be tomorrow. Maybe some of them are here. I think Gabriella was one. Maybe Kat or Kate was another. That is an excellent question. Joe, do you know what our YouTube channel is called?
No, but I bet Sanjay does.
Yeah.
Sanjay?
Do you know what our YouTube channel is called?
Boom.
Nice. Yay. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Nee, for the link. That's great. Yes, Joe and I are instructors. We are not on the marketing team. So, we know a lot about the GRE, but maybe not so much about YouTube. At least for me, I'm not. I feel old. Okay. All right. People are trickling in. We're up to 94 attendees. Welcome back. Good to see you again, Naya. I hope I'm not totally butchering your name. You can chat in a better pronunciation if I am. I apologize. Yeah, happy to have you guys back. Awesome. Night 2, yeah. Nijay. Cool.
Nijay.
Thank you.
Hi, Wendy.
Hello.
All right, here we go. Over 100. It's big.
Yep. It's time. I think it's time to start. Let's get into it. So happy to have you keep chatting in. If you're new tonight, let us know. We're going to be using this chat a lot. Yep, we're going to be doing both quant and verbal. We're going to be doing verbal in the first half. So we'll maybe get a little bit more verbal in than we did last night. We'll be doing quant in the second half. And Nijay, we were not supposed to complete all 15 lessons. That would be a lot. It was 2 lessons. I think they were numbers 10 and 15. That would have been an ambitious goal. It would take a while to do all of them. But you do now have, hopefully you've signed up for the free trial. If you're new tonight, we'll talk about that midway through. So you can go through those other lessons in there at your leisure as you want to. All right, so we're going to be using this chat a lot tonight. We're also going to be using the Q&A feature. If you have questions, we'll try to get to as many questions as we can, though we have a lot to do. We'll have a lot of people. So if we don't get to your question, we apologize in advance. It's nothing personal, just limited time, lots to talk about. The other thing we're going to be doing, we're going to be launching some polls. So let's check that out. I want you guys to poll in when you guess on the GRE. What is your favorite letter to guess?
This is very important.
Very important test strategy.
We're doing research.
Not in the chat though. It's going to be in the poll. So hold it in. Now the poll you should see the poll now.
Holy crap.
Always correct.
This is shocking.
Really?
Shocking results I'm watching rolling right now.
Oh, I can't see the results at the same time as Joan. I'm like, the suspense.
Too close to call. Interesting. Okay, give you. Okay, I guess we're done voting. All right, here we go. I'm ending the poll. We're calling it. We've got a clear-cut winner here.
Wow. Amazing.
Who are the E folks? It's a unique crowd who guesses E. Jackson likes E. I like it. I like it, Jackson. You do you. Yeah. Just to be clear, there's no best answer to guess. Don't guess E on quantitative comparisons because there is no E. But on any other one, it doesn't really matter what you guess. If you're guessing, you're guessing. Every answer is right just as often as every other one. So pick what you want for whatever reason if you're in total guess mode. All right. What's our next one?
What's our next one? Our next poll. Oh, favorite food groups.
Oh, yeah, this is a good one.
This is a good one. Okay. So not in the chat, in the poll. Joe's going to launch the poll, and I'm going to tell you what each answer means for your favorite food group. So, Joe, you want to launch the poll? A is if your favorite food group is meat, fish. B is if your favorite food group is, do I know what the food groups are? Maybe not.
All right.
Fruit.
A, meat, B, fruit, C, dairy, E, grains, sorry, D, grains, and F.
E. There's no F. E is for fats, oils, and sweets, which is my favorite food.
Fats, oils, and sweets.
Whole in. Come on. I see a lot of people whose eating habits are like on par with mine. Ramen noodle and sriracha. It's pretty good.
Yeah, the second question is who here remembers the food pyramid? That's so long gone.
Right? It's such debunked science, but it took up so much of my childhood somehow.
And E, fats. Yeah, we got the food plate now. And I think the food plate finally fixed the idea that you're supposed to just, like, according to the food pyramid, you're supposed to pretty much just eat pasta.
Yeah, which is cool. I'm down with that. Joe, what are the results of our poll?
The winner is fruits.
Wow.
Fruits are pretty popular these days.
But as usual, I'm impressed.
Oh wait, I missed I guess B was supposed to be fruits and veggies. I see.
Oh yeah.
That might have made B even more popular.
Yeah. Oops. Well, now you know Joe and I are not going to teach you about nutrition tonight.
I'm surprised how few people like dairy. C is the dairy one. No cheese fans here. No cheese lovers. Cool.
Nice.
Shout out to the fats and oils people.
Yeah. One of our colleagues is doing keto, so I just learned what that is yesterday.
I actually have one more poll I want to ask. That's an important one, not a fun one. So it's not going to be fun at all, but it's an important one. So I'm going to poll, I would just like an A or a B. A for, let's do this. A for did Quant interact? We asked you guys to download the trial. So A for did the Quant interact only? B, verbal only? C, both? D, neither? And so I'm going to relaunch the poll. Go ahead and let me see that. All right, go for it. A, quant only, B, verbal only, C, both, D, neither. Interesting.
These polls are so suspenseful, Joe.
I know. I get to watch these things like.
I know. And I just sit like, what is
these little bars going everywhere.
No.
Okay. Okay. That's enough. Oop, no, share. Okay, cool. Okay, so about half of us, maybe a third of you guys, when did that? Congrats. It's a short-term assignment, just one day turnaround, and you guys got in there and checked out a couple of those. Hope you liked it. For those who didn't, don't worry, you're not going to be totally lost today. But for those who did, I think you might be able to pick up a few more nuances today for having done it. So good job there. We'll talk more about Interact for those who didn't experience, so you guys can know how to check it out. There's a free trial there that's worth taking a look at. Cool.
All right. Let's get into our content for the day. Here we go. So just in case you're new tonight, I'm Kat. I'm a GRE teacher for Manhattan Prep. I've been here for 3 years. I've been teaching test prep for 10. I worked on Interact. So if you do check it out at some point, you will see me. You will also see Joe.
I'm Joe. I've been working for Manhattan Prep for 7 years. I also worked on the Interact project, which for those who didn't experience that, it's this online videos that are interactive based on what you're doing. You'd see me, Kat, and Mary Richter, another instructor here, teaching you. And teach the GRE, GMAT, and LSAT. So if you guys give up on the GRE and want to go to law school, I'll be there for you as well.
You can now take the GRE for some law schools, though. So could work out in your favor to do the GRE.
Fair point. Fair point. Yeah.
Joe's working on his man bun. It's going to look really good.
Not true. I'm not going to be wearing a man bun. No hating on the man buns, but I'm not my thing.
I like them. I think they look nice.
Okay.
I just think it's funny. You're so opposed. All right, so let's get into it for tonight. Last night's theme was tough stuff made easy or easier, at least. And we looked at a couple things. We looked at quant, weighted averages. We looked at some reading comp argument questions and verbal. Tonight, we are talking about effective strategies. So last night, we looked at really hard stuff. Tonight, we're going to back up and look at some of the fundamentals. We'll talk a little bit about what just to expect from the test as a whole. And on the verbal side, we'll look at a type of vocabulary question called sentence equivalence. That's asking you to pick pairs of words to fit into a sentence. At some point along the way, we'll also tell you a little bit about what some of your options are if you want to prep further. And then Joe, what are we doing in quant?
I guess that's my cue. So for quant, we've got, I'm going to show you guys that there's just different ways to approach problems. So Kat and I are going to take you through some of those general umbrella of ways, and then some specifics for quantitative comparisons, which are a specific kind of problem. If you haven't seen these before, you'll be plenty familiar with them by the end of this. Some specific strategies for that kind of problem that fit under these different general tools we use to approach problems. So I want you guys at the end to be thinking about what are different modes of which I can think about a problem and try to solve a problem.
And that's definitely a theme that we got into a little bit last night and that we'll continue through tonight. Multiple ways to approach these problems and looking for effective sort of twists or alternate strategies, or at least a flexibility in terms of strategy that's going to allow you to get faster and faster as you do these. First, though, we're going to play a game because we're starting out with vocab. So here are 3 words. I would like each of you pick one of these words, a word you don't know, go look it up and think of a fun way to remember it. Some kind of fun mnemonic or story or joke. And then once you have that, share that in the chat. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes to do that. Pick a word that you don't know, look it up, and then share with us some way that you would remember that word. Bonus points for silliness, but it doesn't have to be silly.
All right, 30 seconds. Get your mnemonics in here. Very cool. I feel like I'm seeing some themes here to our Gossamer.
I like that Gossamer went like diverged to like both gross and delicious though,
Yeah.
which I'm kind of on board with. Yeah, it has
I,
both those.
fan of Monster Truculent. I feel like, a lot of people are hitting on like the trucks and things, but I feel
Yeah.
like Monster Truculent just hits the nail on the
Joe,
head.
is that yours?
It's brave. Yeah. Yeah. I wrote Monster Truculent and I love it. No, I can't remember who wrote Monster Truculent, but take a bow to yourself.
It does sound like a joke you would make up.
I will say, I'm not going to repeat them, but I saw some like political ones and ones that are like maybe going over, getting a little edgy. Not going to repeat them here, but I am a big advocate of like, you don't need to apologize for any way you're remembering any words. So,
Yep.
and they can make it even more memorable doing that kind of thing. So do what you got to do to remember these things. That's the only rule when it comes to mnemonics and how you remember a word.
More personal, more silly, more inappropriate. Those are things that are going to stick in your head.
Mm-hmm.
So I like these. And
Cool.
now you guys have 3 more words. Yay.
All right.
All right. So let's talk about what you're going to do with these words. Hi, Jonas. We're going to talk today in the first part of today's session. We're going to just do an overview of the types of verbal questions and how vocab questions work, what they're testing. We'll talk about a basic process for approaching one of the 2 types of vocabulary questions, sentence equivalence. And then we'll talk about some ways we can use this format to our advantage, how we can use the answer choices to help solve these more efficiently. If you did interact, you know that there's a lot of good news about sentence equivalence questions. So we're gonna talk more and expand on some of those tricks from the lesson as well. For anyone who's pretty new to the GRE, we thought it would be useful just to remind you what this overall task looks like. You start with 2 essays, so you write for an hour, and then you do 5 sections that are either quant or verbal. So 2 are quant, 2 are verbal, and then one of those is experimental, either quant or verbal. It is not scored. So 4 of these 5 sections are going to be scored. 1 is not, but they don't tell you which is a bit of a bummer. You don't know. So it could come at any point in this order. So you do your best on all of them. Try not to sort of assume which one is experimental. And yep, do what you can.
You'll just know at the end you got 3 quants. So one of those quants must have been a fake. Or you got 3 verbals. So one of the verbals must have been a fake.
Yep. The essays are both definitely scored by a combination of computer and person. And then the quant and verbal ones are scored by computer. So you get those scores right away. Sometimes, Jackson, I think because they're testing new types of questions, you might see things that look a little bit different from what you're expecting. But I wouldn't say for sure that it would definitely feel harder or easier than other sections.
Main thing is don't try and guess which one's experimental. I use it as an excuse if I feel like I'm having a rough section. I'm like, I'm going to try my best, but like keep it level head, man. Maybe it's the experimental that I just screwed up on. Yep. So just use it to your advantage, not as like some strategic maneuver to be like, which section should I skip?
Yeah,
or something like that.
I like that. Like whichever one you feel worst about, that's the experimental one. That's good. All right. So because we're starting out with verbal, I'm going to hone in a little bit on what you'll see in a verbal section. It's long, this test. So a verbal section is 30 minutes long and it has 20 questions, which means you have about 1.5 minutes per question. Some are going to be a little faster, some a little longer. Keeping in mind, you're also going to have to be reading the passages as part of this timing. So it's fast. It's one of the big challenges. There are 2 types of questions that use vocabulary in them. Text completion, there are 6 of those, and sentence equivalence, there are 4 of those. They both have blanks in them, and you're picking words to fill in those blanks based on the meaning of the sentence. So we talk about these, we call them vocab questions because they're using all those vocab words that you're going to be studying. But they are testing reading and critical reasoning skills in the same way that reading comp is. So those core reading skills apply across verbal. They're just using vocabulary as a tool for testing those skills. So that's half your section, the text completion questions and the sentence equivalence, the vocab questions. The other half of the section are reading comp. And those are the mix of different reading questions that we talked a little bit about last night. So tonight, we're just going to be focusing in on one of these two types of vocab questions, sentence equivalence. Though the good news is a lot of what we talk about with sentence equivalence is going to be nicely applicable to our work with text completion once you get to working on those questions down the line. So we'll just focus on sentence equivalence, but you can use some of the strategy we'll talk about tonight to also help with the text completion questions. Yes, for the first half. The second half, we're going to be switching to Quant. All right. So text completion questions. These have 1, 2, or 3 blanks, and you're picking one word to go in each blank. Sentence equivalence, what we're focusing on tonight, those just have 1 blank, and you are going to pick 2 answers that both go in that blank and also match each other. So these are the 2 tasks we're going to be balancing throughout tonight's verbal portion. How do we figure out what fits the meaning of the sentence, but then also thinking about what answers match with each other? And those 2 things are the foundation of our strategy for those. Good news, all of the vocab questions use the same core process. So we're going to walk through this with a question in a minute, but I'll give you an overview now. If you guys got a chance to check out Interact, you would have seen this there too. We always start just by reading the sentence. So we read the sentence, and then we think about what clues do we have in the sentence that tell us how to fill in that blank. So we spend a fair amount of time before we get to the answer choices on a lot of these. Why do that? Some of you I know have worked with some of these. Why do we start with these 2 steps, not looking at the answers, just reading the sentence using clues? Yeah. Yep. Nice. Yeah. Out of those answers, only 1 or 2 are right. The others are all tricks. So if we look at them right away, they can influence our reading of the sentence, pull us into those traps they're setting. These test makers are smart, so they're putting all those words there for a reason, to distract or trick you. But if we really get that sentence up front and we're really confident that we know what does that blank mean, that there's proof in the sentence that tells us what that blank means, then we're a lot less likely to fall into those traps. If we've done a good job with that, then we can usually pretty quickly go through our answer choices, start crossing them off, check that it works in the sentence, and there we go.
I'll just add something interesting here. We've when we've looked into this and researched like how well do our methods work, here's something cool we found. When people are reading, the first thing people will do just instinctively, or most people, is they just read words into the sentence, and for various reasons that doesn't work well. One of them is that there's plenty of wrong answers that sound fine in the sentence. Like they make a sentence that if someone said it out loud, you'd have been like, that's normal. So there's lots of words that sound okay in the sentence that aren't the right answer. And that's why that's one of those reasons to take this step up front. But when we just tell people, hey, wait, don't look at the answers right away, like read the sentence first and make a prediction, they do just as badly, because they're still predicting words that would just sound nice there. So I'd say the key step for you guys to think about if you're practicing this for the first time today is that you need to look for clues in the sentence. You need to consciously say, what clues in the sentence are cluing me into what that blank should be, not just predicting what sounds good there.
So let's try it out on a question. Here we go. Here is just the sentence. So I'm going to start you guys off with this sentence, and I want you to read through it, think of the clues, and then write down on your paper what you would fill in this blank with. Don't share it in the chat yet, because I don't want you guys to influence one another. We'll give you a chance to share it. But for now, just take 30 seconds or so. Think through what are the clues in this sentence that might help us figure out what goes in the blank, and then write down your prediction. Don't share it yet, though. I'll tell you in just a second. All right, now go for it.
Some good ones
I
flipping by there.
Yeah, I suppose I set us up for this question.
It's a good prediction.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what were the clues that helped you here? Where did you sort of focus when you were thinking about clues in the sentence? Ooh, yeah. So we have something about descended. And what's interesting here, I think, is that all of the clues come after the blank. That's often the case. You know, it's really important to read all the way to the end of the sentence before you start thinking about what are the important clues, because a lot of times they'll come later beyond where the blank is. So we know, all right, we have 300,000 citizens who descend from less than 1,000 survivors. So we start out with 1,000 and we end up with 300,000. So we're seeing a lot of things about the study of heredity, about how populations sort of diverge and change. Joe, what would you fill in here?
I think there's this idea of like maybe they're studying maybe diversity, but I don't know. I feel like I'm a little torn now. Like, what should I be focusing on?
Yeah. I think this one is actually, we have the sense of what the important clues are, but I think it's a little hard to tell, at least to me. I don't know that I would know exactly where to go, but I would have thought about those clues and I would have come up with some kind of focus going into, you know, something about population, genetics, something along those lines. So even if you don't feel like you can come up with a single super precise word, having an area of focus and having a sense of what the key clues are, that's the really important stuff to get out of this sentence analysis portion. All right, so with that in mind, let's take a look at our answer choices. I want to remind you guys, we are looking for a pair. So we're looking for two words, and they're going to fit in this sentence, but they are also going to match with each other. Keep that in mind. Write down for yourself what answers you choose, but don't share them in the chat until I tell you. So again, so we don't influence each other too much. Here you go. That's a very good question, Brad, and we're going to talk a lot about that. That's getting into a lot of what we think about with these questions. All right, go ahead, chat in. What two answer choices would you choose? All right, interesting. I think I'm seeing a bunch of things, but I'm seeing a lot of splits, people saying A and E, or I saw some B and F. Yeah. And I think way back, Brad said something interesting. He said, should we first eliminate words that don't have pairs? And I think that's a good thing to do at this point. Let's say we've narrowed it down. We're thinking maybe it's AE, maybe it's BF. I'm seeing a lot of people in those two camps. And then I say, okay, cool. Therapy seems a little off topic, doesn't have a pair. History, well, maybe in the sentence, history is plausible, but it's not really, it just doesn't have a pair. I think there is a way that you could argue maybe history makes sense, we could study history this way. But again, there's no pair for that. So we can eliminate that. And now we're essentially down to 2 options. Yeah, Natasha, they will all be real words. They will also all be the correct part of speech. So grammar is never in grounds for disqualifying things.
If I were making the GRE, I would put gibberish words in there sometimes, because that's just
no. I hope ETS never hires you.
That would be so funny if like one of these is not a real word. And that's like a minus point, not just.
Oh my God, English is so weird though. Like, I don't think I could play that game and be like, sure, I buy it. I buy anything could be a word in English. I'm seeing a lot of comments though about diversity and mutation. People saying diversity and mutation are not a real pair. And you guys have it. Diversity and mutation, while I agree, they seem to fit with our ideas that this is about genetics, about population, about heredity. Diversity and mutation are not close enough to one another. So I can eliminate them on those grounds. Now, I did hear someone say the words don't have to be an exact match, and that's true. But they do have to overlap pretty closely. Like if you think about word meanings as sort of a cloud of meanings, they have to have a pretty significant overlap like this. The idea is that when I put them into the sentence, they give me the same meaning. And now studying diversity, if I tell you I'm studying diversity, would you know that I was studying mutation? Like, no. You wouldn't. And vice versa. If I told you I was studying mutation, you wouldn't know I was studying diversity. So while we can connect these words, they are not close enough to be a real pair. Yeah, if you knew some other things, like maybe, but that's bringing in too much outside information. We want to stay as close as possible to sort of the most literal, most precise reading of the sentence.
And now I'm kind of seeing it though, that from the clue, I think when I was thinking diversity up front, I think I was making my own assumptions that like, oh, if there's only 1,000 people, there's not much diversity. But who says? Like they're not explicitly telling us that. And to go from 1,000 people to 300,000 is like explicitly there's growth, but there's not really anything explicit in going from 1,000 to 3,000 or starting from 1,000 that tells us explicitly that there is something going on with diversity. So I feel like I see that a little more clearly now.
Yeah. So what do revivification and rejuvenation mean? What do those words mean? Yeah. They both have to do with returning things to life, with sort of the expansion, returning to life. So viv, like vivacious or revive, vivify, to give life to. And then what does that connect to? Any words you guys know? That root? Yeah, juvenile, like juvenescence is youthfulness, like it has to do with youth. So rejuvenation, returning youth, returning life to things. So even if those words at first throw you off because they look really weird and multisyllabic and strange, take a pause, take a breath. Think, is there anything in there I recognize? Can I at least make an educated guess about the meaning, even if the word kind of throws me off? Yeah, Jackson, that's a good explanation. Like if we start with 1,000 and then we end up with 300,000, we're a population that's almost been wiped out, but then is suddenly coming back to life. And so even though that isn't where our minds first went with the clues, because of the way the answer choices work, that's actually going to be the best fit both for the sentence and as a pair. Yeah, DJ, we are here to beat the ETS test makers. Evil people like Joe.
Okay, just to be clear, I'm neither evil nor do I make the ETS tests.
Joe, I think you'd be a lot less evil if you had a man bun. Just saying. Oh, that's a good one thing. How do we think of root words? Look at lists of words and find lists of roots and you can work on learning them. So that's something you can learn as well as learning words, is learning roots. So we've seen something cool, and this is going to help us. In addition to understanding the sentence, understanding the answer choices, grouping things into pairs is going to be really useful. And in fact, sometimes we might even decide to start by looking at the answer choices. Going back to this, if we had started by pairing up answer choices here, I think we wouldn't have gone down that whole diversity mutation rabbit hole, because we wouldn't have had the context of the sentence to distort our sense of how things paired. So we're going to spend a little bit of time now thinking about how we can use answer choices and pairs and answer choices to help us out as we answer these. And we will, Luke, we're going to get to that question of sort of where do you start? We'll talk about it as we get into the strategy. But to start, I just wanted to do a little practice with pairing words. So here's a set of answer choices. Chat in, what pairs do you see? Nice. Yeah. Awesome. I see. Okay. We have lull and hiatus, both of which mean a pause. And then we have epitome and acme, both of which are highest point. So at this point, if I was then going to go look at my question, I'd say, well, definitely not resolution, definitely not nadir. Neither of those has a pair, nadir being the lowest point. So now I know I'm looking, when I go back to that sentence, my focus is either, am I looking for a peak for a high point, or am I looking for a pause? And I can let that inform my analysis of this sentence. Let's try another one. What pairs do you guys see here? You could see 1, 2, or 3 pairs. 2 pairs, I think, is probably more common, but there's certainly some with 3 pairs, some with 2 pairs. I think the test tries to avoid patterns. A lot of people are falling into the trap that I fall into, but I'm seeing some people getting it. Garrulous and loquacious are the pair. They both mean talkative. Now, we also have another pair here, gregarious and convivial, which mean lively. Convivial, there's our viv root that we just saw. Convivial, liking to be around people. Gregarious, liking to be around people. So while gregarious people who like other people, may be garrulous, may be talkative, they're actually different. They have better pairs here. And taciturn and reticent, I saw a lot of that. And those are the opposite of garrulous and loquacious. Those are being quieter. If you don't know most of the words and the answers, then definitely starting with the sentence is a better place to go. Tasha, it's a slightly complicated answer to your question, but I promise we're going to talk about it shortly. Yeah, so here, but I've still narrowed it down, right? Instead of dealing with 6 things, I at least know, okay, am I looking for talkative, enjoys being around other people, or quiet? So I've at least focused somewhat, even if I haven't been able to eliminate any. Let's do one more. What pairs here? Yeah, Ezekiel, we're recording it, and we'll post the recording on YouTube sometime next week. What pairs do you see here? Yeah, droop and flag. What do those mean? Both have to do with losing energy. Oh, interesting. I'm seeing a lot of people pairing enervate and vivify. And that's interesting. Those are actually opposites. So that's something to keep in mind. Remember, we're looking for synonyms, not antonyms. It can be surprisingly easy to flip around. So enervate has to do with losing energy. Vivify is to give life to. Again, it's our viv root that's showing up in so many of our problems. Ooh, yeah, then enervate and flag. There's something weird going on here. Enervate, flag, and droop. It looks like they all kind of go together. They all have to do with losing energy. Let's take a closer look at that and see what's going on. All right. Joe, what do we do here? How do we deal with having these 3 words?
Well, I know can we just pick 3 answers? I think that Can we just get around it by
Yeah,
doing that?
go for it.
So there's always two answers, so I can't do that. But I think that's what we got to use is that that only two of these are an actual match. And we've got to tease out which of the two are the true match, and one of these is kind of an odd man out.
Can anyone use enervate in a sentence? Can anyone give me a sentence with enervate? How would you use enervate in this sentence? Nice. Yeah. That's... And what about flag? How would you use flag in a sentence? How would you use flag in a sentence? Yeah, people are not psyched about the gym or studying or the heat. So flag, that's one meaning of flag, but what about the energy? Yeah. She was flagging after the run. We're also down on running today, which is great. I'm feeling down on running today too. And what about drooping? As you should, Brad, as you should. Yeah.
I think we made yesterday, PBR and JD is a drink that's happening. I think it's a thing now.
Yeah, you started that?
It's now a thing.
I'm going to start a campaign for you to have a man bun. So that'll be how we even out. Okay, so here we have 3 sentences. What's the difference? Which of these words is different from the other 2? Yeah. There, I see it from DS. These 2 don't need objects. So flagging and drooping are things that I can do. Like I can say, I am flagging, I am drooping. But if I want to say that something's enervating, I say, oh, that's enervating me. If I say I'm enervating, then I'm like really down on myself because I'm saying I'm draining energy from other people. So flag and droop are the true pair because we use them in the same way. These are verbs here, all parts of speech. And I've changed the form. I could say I've changed the form a little bit to a different form of the verb, but keeping them all as verbs. So this is a really common trap. We call it the false triple, where we have 3 words that look like they're similar. So here we have 3 words that all have to do with not using a lot of words. Which one doesn't belong? Which one of these things is not like the others? Succinct. Ooh. Anyone want to make a, yeah. So I'm seeing it. Succinct is the one that is out. And you can imagine how you'd use them again. Like if I tell you that, if I'm like, Joe, you're very curt with me today, very brusque, yeah, it would be a bummer. But if I'm like, oh, Joe, that was such a succinct email that you wrote, that's nice. So it's important here when you are learning words that you're not just learning the definition itself, but you also are maybe putting sentences on your flashcards. You're trying to use these words in your succinct emails and in your conversations with people because the usage is going to be important as well. So let's bring this idea of pairing up the answer choices and integrate it back into solving some sentence equivalence questions. So you can start with sentence analysis, understanding the sentence, or you can start with pairing up the answer choices. Or you can, start with one and the other, go back and forth. You can kind of mix them together as well. Both are good tools to have. Let's try it. Let's try starting with answer choice analysis. Then we'll talk about when to do it, how to sort of order this. But let's try it. What pairs do we have here? Cool. Yeah, we have 2 nice pairs. So we have flabbergasted and bedazzled. And we have crushed and disappointed. Nice. So right off the bat, I can get rid of aggravated and I can get rid of bored. And now I have a focus. So now we're going to go back to our sentence, and we know we're looking for either something that means really amazing and great, or something that means really disappointing. So we know we just have two options. See how quickly, when I show you the sentence, you can find clues to support one of these two options. So here you go. Here's the sentence. As quickly as you can, do the clues in this sentence support amazing or disappointing? Flabbergasted could be neutral positive. Like, it's like amazed in the way that like awe can be both great and also just a lot. Yeah, answers are coming in fast and they're coming in accurate. We have a wealth of information on a myriad of topics. So we see great, amazing. So if I know my words and I do my pairing first, I can often be really fast with my sentence. I don't have to get bogged down in that sentence because I have a very clear idea of what I'm looking for. And then I go and I can say, okay, flabbergasted and bedazzled. Those are my answers. Yeah, Samantha. So for text completion for the other vocab, you always start with the sentence, but here we might change up our approach, and we're going to talk about when to do which one now. So when to use this. Joe, you always use answers first, right?
I actually generally start with the answers, which is a little bit controversial. One of the dangers if you go to those answers is you're now exposing yourself to potential traps that are now in your brain and you can't get them out there, and they might be tugging on your thinking process. But I find that there's enough of these where you can get down to just two possible pairings. And if you're down to two possible pairings, then that really defines my work. I'm like, this is either saying they're angry or cheap. Like, I just got to figure out which one it is.
Yeah.
I've just found there's been a lot of questions where I end up spending like a minute and a half really trying to figure out exactly what this sentence is all about. And then I go to the answer choices. And on some of them, they were really hard. And I'm like, well, I would have had to do that work eventually. But on the easier ones, I'm like, man, I really kind of worked a little too hard on that one. So at this point, for the sentence equivalence at least, I'm in the answer choices, finding my pairs first, just so I can narrow down what I need to do. But again, there are downsides to that. But yeah, that's the way I approach it at this point.
For my part, I go back and forth. I don't consistently start with the sentence or with the answers. I will decide in the moment. If the sentence looks like it's going to take me a long time to read, if it's really complicated, if I can't be bothered, if I'm tired, then I'll go to the answers to get that focus. If I know the words in the answer choices, then I'm more like if I scan them quickly and I'm like, know these, then I'm more likely to pair them first, because pairing definitely rewards knowing the words well. Or be Joe. The other thing too is I do pair at some point. So even if I start with a sentence, I'll still take a moment to pair my answers before I really commit to my choices, just to make sure I'm not pairing things. If I don't know a lot of the words, then I'm more likely to use a good understanding of the sentence to help me eliminate what I can, so I can make a good guess. So if you don't know a lot of the words, then it's often good to focus a little bit more on the sentence. The important thing, same thing we talked about with Quant last night, practice doing these questions in different ways. Practice starting with the answers, practice starting with the sentence, see what works really well for you, and also notice when one works well versus the other. For example, let's say we saw this. Would you want to read this? Or would you say like, maybe I'll check out the answers? Yeah, I don't want to read this either. This is long and it's dense, and I already see the word obviated in it, and I don't like that word one bit. So let's go ahead and take a look at our answers. Here we go. What answers pair here? Yeah. So strong consensus on A and B, curtailing and undermining. Not exactly the same thing, but they both have to do, they're both negative. They both have to do with limiting or sort of lessening or bringing down in some way. Joe, what other pairs would you put here?
Let's see, we have targeting and lobbying. I mean, are lobbyists kind of targeting, instigating? I don't know. I'm not seeing facilitating. None of them are jumping out as like definite hardcore pairs to me. I don't know. What do my fans think?
Yeah. Like I see some, I can kind of see the case for C and D, maybe depending on the context of the sentence, it would make those make sense. I'm not sure that like facilitating and lobbying, I really like facilitating kind of easing along.
They're just not going to drop the man bun thing.
No, me neither, Joe. You know, I don't let things go. Sorry. uh, so we know right here, okay, we think there's only one pair that's good. So let's check the sentence and see if that pair makes sense. So now we can go back to this real nasty long string of a sentence. And I want you guys to just see how quickly do you think curtailing and undermining work here? Yeah, so Nietzsche, this is a good time to then turn to the sentence and see if that gives you some. Yeah, dissent is disagreement. Yeah. What are some clues that give us the idea that, oh, actually curtailing and undermining kind of work? What clues do you see in this sentence? Yeah. Would-be naysayer to powerless bystander. So we have these clues that we're taking people and we're bringing them down. We're limiting their power. So to curtail power and to undermine power would produce a similar result. So if you're ever wondering like, these words, I don't know if they're really a good pair, do they produce a similar result? Like imagine what's actually going on in the sentence. And like, if I take an activist and I curtail their power and I undermine their power, do I produce a similar result? Yeah, because they're less powerful. So even though here A and B we were hesitant about as a pair, we had a sense that was our best bet. And then we went back to the sentence and used the sentence to reinforce that. This is why I think practicing both methods is really important. This flexibility is something, being able to sort of toggle back and forth depending on the demands of the problem. Having that flexibility is extra important as these get harder. And this is a tricky one. There's some tricky stuff here.
And just to then clarify that, so something there, because I've seen a few questions on, just to make sure everyone's on the up and up on this, it's always exactly two answers we're going to pick. I've seen a couple of people ask, I just want to make sure everyone's clear on that. But you can see in the directions for this question type, it says they need, just like we're saying here, that similar result. We need to pick two words that give the sentence the same meaning. So they don't say that words need to have the same meaning. But if you think about that, it's going to be hard for the words to be too different and give the sentence the same meaning. So there's a little leeway about them being direct synonyms. But ultimately they need to be close enough that they can give the sentence the same meaning, and that's the ultimate test. They're not going to play on grammar ever. It's always like they're all verbs, they're all adjectives. That's always that's not the game they're playing. I just saw that question run by.
And if you think that the word is the wrong part of speech, it probably means there's an alternate definition of that word that you are not familiar with. I think this one's pretty tricky. I don't know. Joe, what about you?
I'd say the vocab is like on the easier side, but like I think a fairly twisty sentence. So I'd put this at like medium to a little above medium.
Yeah. And that's a good thing too, to point out that sometimes they add difficulty by making the words and the answers really hard. Sometimes they add difficulty by making the sentence really hard. And sometimes they do both of those things at the same time. So it's not always just that the words are hard. It could be the sentence. It could be both. Here's one. I want you guys to try. I'm going to give you a minute. I want you to try whatever approach or combination of approaches you feel like trying out right now. Don't give us your answers yet. I will tell you when to chime in with your answers. Good luck. Pair answers, analyze the sentence, whatever works for you. Don't chat in your answers. I will tell you when.
All right, I'm going to actually launch a poll, and I want you guys to pick your single favorite answer. So if you picked two, hopefully, pick the one that you like. Pick one of your two, whichever one you want.
You can chat in F if you can't answer in the poll.
Okay, here's what we got. Take a look at that. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at this one. Let's go down to the answer. I'd like to hear which ones you think are decent matches. Let's go do that approach. Let's start on those answer choices. All right, guys. I see the answers. We're good. Let's start. Oh yeah, sorry. We got CF, DE, DE, BF. Okay. Yeah. So I see this one. Let me grab my pen here. So I'm seeing an updated enhanced with DE. Boasted of promise is another one I'm seeing. C and F. Predicted and promised is another one. And now I'd like you to hit me with some clues. Can you type in what do you think the clues are? And yeah, I see some ABs as well. So as we go down to the answers, there's a little bit of mishmash between A, B, C, and F about which exactly fits together there. But D is definitely one. Let's get some of our clues that we have up here. Cool. So I'd say from these original specification right off the bat, what answers do you think? I think we can eliminate some of these pretty quickly. Which ones are out? So we have whoop. Let's try that again. We have our original specification. Yeah, D and E are out. our original specification isn't the thing that is, it didn't have that thing updated or enhanced. That was the original. That thing is not updating or enhancing. So you can see even if you have one good pair, you can often, hopefully it would have been nice if D had been the correct pair. In this case, DE is an incorrect pair, so we've still got 2 eliminations. I think we can go further with that, even with just that idea of what's the original one working with. So in this case, let's see what we're saying here. Possess software. Okay, so here's where the key is on this one. It's this idea that we have it actually had all the capabilities the original specification has, or is saying it is claiming it will have. Yes. And so that's where possess, which is a popular answer people are picking, goes wrong. Is we end up with possess because it's not something our original specification that they actually had. It's something it's claiming it will have. It's told all of these investors we're going to have this thing. And so which of these are going that way? And they're not an exact match, but it's boasted of and promised. So good job for those who got there. You can see boasted of and promised are not direct synonyms, but how do they give us the same meaning? There's these things that they've told the investors we're going to have this and fell short. Some of these are fairly close, but then you have to then judge their meaning within the sentence. So you can see that these ones we had 4 that honestly, depending on the sentence, different ones of these maybe could have been good pairs. And so just like we saw yesterday, there's not like this foolproof, if you do this, you'll always end up with an easy one or the other situation. You're still gonna have to look at the nuance of the question to find which are a good match.
Predict is a little different. To promise is to say, I'm going to do this. To boast is to say, I'm going to do this. To predict is to say, that's going to happen. So it's a subtle difference, but in this context, to predict, if I say like, I promise I'm going to like do all my homework by tomorrow, it's different to say like, I predict by noon tomorrow I will have done all my homework. Mm-hmm. And to me, original specification versus the sort of original specification versus actual release, like those are the clues I would focus
on. There's no specific thing saying it could be boasting, but then again, in a comparison of what's gonna piss off the original investors, it's if you said like, this is gonna happen, you've sort of put your stamp that it's gonna happen. Not just that we think it's going to happen.
And Leandra and Naomi, I think you're raising a really good point here that it sounds weird. Mm-hmm. These sentences are designed, these problems are designed to thwart our sort of innate sense of like, oh yeah, that sounds good. They're designed so that if that's how you solve them, you'll often fall into a trap. So it is in fact often the case that the answer that is correct based on this sort of more math-like analysis of a sentence is going to sound a little uncomfortable. And that's one of the challenges with these is to adapt your ear a little bit so that you're not just listening, you're sort of picking apart the meanings in this way. And it takes some practice. Kyle, I hear you. It's not a test of good writing. I'm a writer and it is endlessly frustrating to me. So yeah, it is true. I'm curious, we should move on to Quant. You can definitely chat in more questions about this, maybe in the Q&A, and I can try to answer them as we pick up. WS, there isn't a single bullet. It's a combination of different approaches that you practice and adapt and find a system that works for you. If there were like a single easy magic bullet strategy, I think we would be out of a job because it would be easy to do. I know, I wish there were, but that's one of my big takeaways for all of you is to build flexibility as you practice. Be willing to change up. Practice both of these methods. Be flexible, and then watch out for some of the traps, the sort of sounds good trap, the false triples, words that fit in the sentence but don't have a pair, and learn your vocab. Make it fun. Make your sentences fun. All right, we are going to transition to Quant, but before we do, I want to talk a little bit more about other things. Yeah, yay, Quant. I want to talk about other things that you can do if you want to keep preparing beyond these 3 sessions this week. Then we'll take a quick breather for a minute, and then we'll switch to Quant. So we showed you guys this last night if you were here. For people that were new, here it is again. But I think it's worth seeing a couple more words about some of these different options, because we showed you all of this but didn't talk through a ton. There are a bunch of different ways to continue preparing. And the good news is you're here, and this is free, and free is always, things are always great. But if you want to go further, there are a couple options here that allow you to do free trials, so you can check them out before you commit. One is our standard course, which is a once a week 3-hour class in both quant and verbal. You can take them in person at one of our test centers or online on the same platform we're using tonight, Zoom. I teach both in person and online. I think they are both have as much value. It depends a lot on your preference, your schedule, what's available in your area. So I know sometimes people are a little shy about online stuff, but I think online work, from having done a lot of it as well as a lot of in-person, is just as good. And if you're really busy and if it's hard for you to travel, online can be a better option. We also have Interact, which I know a bunch of you have checked out. That's our self-directed asynchronous course. It has video lessons. It has tons of problems and drills. It's designed to be a complete prep experience that you can do at your own pace in your own home. We offer a free trial of that for 7 days. So maybe Joe can put the link in the chat, but if you want, you can go and check that out. That's we both think it's great. We both worked on it, so we know it well, along with a third teacher, Mary, who you'll see when you check it out. If you just want to do math, we offer a version of our either online or in-person course that is only math. It's 4 sessions long. And we also offer a GRE course that comes bundled with some MBA admissions advising and is more designed for the needs of people using this test for MBA programs. Yeah, so it's our full course plus some extra MBA stuff.
And that GRE for MBA, and I'll just say I teach the GMAT as well, and I'll just, for people who are going to business school, I think, have you taught the GRE for MBA, Kat?
I haven't. It's yeah.
It's brand new, and it just has, I think, a little bit more of a, there's sort of a business school attitude I think people bring, where I think maybe people are a little more competitive, not necessarily to get a certain score, but just like the way they go about working and the way they're setting aside time for this. So that's what GRE for MBA is. It's still teaching the GRE, really a lot of overlap there. It can also just be nice to be around fellow MBA applicants, honestly, and people are in the same boat as you, we found.
Yep. And it comes with some like admissions consulting help as well. One more thing to say about the full course. We have a free practice test on our website, but the full course comes with 6 practice tests. It comes with tons of books, including the official guide and all of our books, online flashcards, all of that. So it's the class, but then all of the resources you need to study in addition to the class. Joe, do you know how much the GRE MBA is?
The GRE for MBA is $15.99.
And the quant tonight is going to be core strategies. So we're going to look at some foundational strategies for across a few different topics. And with that said, let's just take a minute to stretch, get up. If you need to get a drink, we'll be back in a minute and we'll be talking about core quant strategies.
All right, let's get back into this. You've had enough time to do some jumping jacks. Here we go. Gonna grab this guy. For those asking about the test, I think there's just a couple basic questions I'll throw out there while I'm loading this up. The test is always, there we go. Okay, there you are. Sorry guys, 1 second. Lost my chat. There they are. No. Oh, there it is. I found you guys. The test is always online unless you're in some super remote place where there's no GRE testing facilities, and I think they offer a paper test. Or if you have, there's specific disabilities people have where they offer a paper test as well. Other than that, it's on a computer in a sterile testing center. As far as how long to study, I'd say it's going to depend a lot on what your goals are and where you are right now. I'd say a chance to give yourself the full, like, I have been through everything and like had a chance to review things. Generally, I think it's about 3 months is if you're like really trying to max out. I studied this stuff pretty hard and I think I gave it a fair shake. 3 months is something you should budget yourself if you can. Some people go a little more than that. I'd say the max anyone should ever study for this stuff is 6 months, no more than that. But 3 months, if you're hitting your score before that though, no need to study that long. All right, here we go. Let me grab my key. All right, so here's what we're gonna do for quant strategies. Get ready for this. There's 3 big general ways. This isn't like 100% true and there's an overlap between these, but I want you to think about different modes of solving problems. And here's the gist of it is starting with numbers, there's this advantage and we'll talk about what I mean by that with a certain technique today. They tend to be concrete, meaning if I say I went 3 miles per hour for 2 hours, how far did I go? 3 miles an hour for 2 hours. Isn't our brain amazing? It just like spits out an answer. Yeah, it just kind of knows it. You're not thinking about a formula. What if I said I went X miles per hour in a total of Y miles? How long was I running for? And so you don't have to, and so the first 3 answers, we had 3 different answers. So just, I think some of you might see it. Yeah, we don't know the number. The answer, by the way, was Y over X for that one, the way I worded it. But I just wanted to make a point there. There's an idea of when you have a number, your brain's pretty concrete with it, and it handles it well. When we're in variables, it's harder, even if you're really good at algebra. Yeah, exactly. You guys have proved the point I'm trying to make. Algebra, it's getting a little more abstract now, but the downside of numbers is it's more computation. So at top we have less abstract, more computation. So in some ways easier to think about, but it can often require more math. Algebra, it's sort of middle ground. We're translating, creating variables, but once we do that, that's abstract. But once we've done it, the solution can be pretty painless. In the bottom part, which we'll talk more about, that's the most abstract. It's when you really have a deep understanding of a topic, and you can sometimes avoid a lot of computation when you do this. And I'd say a lot of the weighted averages concepts we got into yesterday, I would say were reasoning. They use your brain's stuff over the numbers and computation. You will find out shortly, LeVar. Here we go. So we're going to start with quantitative comparisons. Just as a reminder of how these work, you get two quantities, A and B. This is part of the math sections of the test. And in those sections, about a third of the questions, 7 of them, will be quantitative comparisons. You get a quantity A, a quantity B, and your job is to figure out which one's bigger. You pick A if A is bigger, you pick B if B is bigger, you pick C if they're the same size, and you pick D if it could be either one. A could be bigger, but also B could be bigger. Okay, then I'm going with D. That's how this works. And then all of these, you can get information as well outside of the quantities where they might give you extra information at the top. So I'm going to give you a little set. You can try to answer these however you can. Although if you did the interact work, let's see if you can use some of those tools you used in Kat's picking numbers lesson. Try that on for size. See if you can make your way through these. These are all kind of riffs on each other. Here we go. I'll give you guys, don't answer any of these in the chat just yet. I'll give you guys 6 minutes for the group. So a nice warm-up set here. Okay, we're gonna wrap this up now. Let's talk about this. You guys are going nuts there in the chat window. And Kristen says she thinks she knows what the answer is because of the look on my face, which I resent. I'm total poker face. You can't read me. Yeah, go ahead and come back at once. Go ahead and why don't you just type in your 4 answers if you want. Let's just see if they all look interesting. I'm pretending that this means anything to me, but unfortunately I'm not like some info reading computer, so I have no idea what I'm looking at right now. So let's do this. Let's just look at these one at a time and pull in one at a time. So here we go. Let's tackle this first question. For those who are brand new to this, you'll know what's going on by the end of this. And for those who did the Interact lesson, hopefully we can refine those strategies you learned. So here we go. Let's, don't pick E here, please. Remember, there is no E. Remember, A for A is greater, B for B is greater. This was the first one you did. C for they're the same, D for we can't determine it. Cool, cool. So that's about half the people had voted. I kind of see a trend here, headed towards A. Let's talk about this. So let's see, for those who did the Interact work, what's the first, one way of approaching this, remember, is to test out cases. What's the first case you all checked out? See a 0, 0, -2, 0, -2. Well, which should we do, 0 or -2? Do you guys, are either of them fine? Not 0. Yeah, careful, guys. Remember this information. We've got to listen to this guy. X is less than -1. Looking at a number line. Here's 0, here's -1. We've got to try values that are over here. So we're not allowed to try 0. I like the idea because our first case, remember, should be easy, and 0 would have been a really easy one to try, but we're not allowed to. Integers are numbers that can't be expressed as decimals. Good question. So first case, -2, I love it because it's an easy case. Test easy. What's -2 cubed? Cubed means multiply it by itself 3 times. So -2 times -2 is 4, times -2 one more time is -8. So quantity A is -8. X to the 5th, we need to multiply by -2 2 more times. What's that? -8 times 2 is 16. 16 times -2 is -32. Side note, good to know your powers of 2. And get you out of many a pinch here. Up to 2 to the 10. Know your powers of 2. Does anyone know 2 to the 10 here? Nice work on Wesha for the win. All right, cool. So what answer choices are out? So just reminding ourselves of how these work. What can we say about our answer choices just from this case? 1024 is the answer. 2048 is 10 to the 11. 2048 is a great way to learn the powers of 2, Rebecca. A is our answer already? Yeah. In this case, A was greater, but that's just one particular case. So it doesn't mean A is necessarily our answer. But we do know that B is not our answer because we know that B isn't always bigger. Apparently A can be bigger. And we know that C is our answer because, again, we know they're not, C is only our answer if they have to be equal. And apparently they don't have to be equal. So technically D is still alive because it's possible if we picked a different number, it'd be bigger. What could we do for a second case? And yeah, Gregory, I agree with you. We'll come back to it. Let's do -3 at the next, a different number. -3 cubed is -27. To the 5th, I know it's negative because to an odd power, we'll keep our sign. And I might just go to the calculator to do 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. But you'd get 243. Which of these is greater? Yeah, good point. We know, so A is greater again. We still can't say for sure A is greater, but now this is where we can try and look for the trend. If we look at where the trend is going, in the first case, A was a little bit bigger. In the second case, A was a lot bigger. So we can postulate that if we keep going in the same direction, A is just going to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Or in a bigger idea, we can think about our number line and say, hey, for numbers over here, when you take them to high odd powers, they get smaller and smaller. So x to the fifth will be much smaller than x to the cube when we're talking about numbers over here. So A is our answer. Congrats to those who got that one. Let's move through these other ones, which are just variations on the same thing. Second question. I'll hand it off to Kat for this one.
Yes. All right. So something we saw on that last one right at the start was that this upfront information up here is really important. So we want to, oh, you launched a poll, Joe. Thank you. So answer Joe's poll and then click it aside. Joe, what results are we getting in our poll?
Hold on, we had to get a quorum here, 50%
Okay.
participation. There it is.
Okay. We're so official today.
It's so official. I just wanted to be in control. All right. There it is.
Cool. A lot of votes for C and D. Nice. So let's start with this upfront information. As you guys saw last night, my Achilles heel in Quant is always making small errors, and a good place to make a small error is to not think through this upfront information. So if I know that x is an integer and it is between -2 and 2, what are my possible values for x? Yeah, they're going to be -1, 0, and 1. Joe, could you write for me? The internet is totally throwing off my stylus right now.
I am on it.
All right, so I have -1, 0, and 1, and Joe is going to fix it so it looks nice.
That looks like it's pi. Come on, what is that?
It's not my fault. When you take over the screen, then it just kicks me off the stylus. Maybe we've worked together too long. So I'm going to test all of those three options. So let's see. If I test x equals -1, what's -1 cubed? -1 cubed. Yeah, still -1. Nice. What if I test -1 to the fifth? What is it then? Yeah, it is still -1. Nice. What about, let's go on to x equals 0. Yeah, right off the bat, I see there's a case where they're equal. I can get rid of a and b. What about x equals 0? Well, I know that x cubed 0. Yep, x to the fifth still 0. Add in more zeros, still 0. And then finally, x equals 1. 1 cubed. Yeah, 1 in both cases. Nice. So I see here, okay, I consider my upfront information. I only have 3 possible options for x, and those are all giving me equal results. So once I get those, I can feel confident that C is correct because there's no other possible thing that I could test. Yeah, if it had the greater than or equal to sign, then we could test -2 or 2, but here they're excluded. So I've thought of my 3 cases. I've tested them all. Can't test fractions. I can choose answer choice C. It says x is an integer, so that rules out fractions up front.
So you can see you got to know some of those nitty-gritty things. You have to know what an integer is. There's some other language you'll need to learn, like multiples and divisibility and what those things mean.
Yeah, vocab, still in math.
All right, here's the one that everyone's like, something's wrong with the problem. Joe forgot to put something up. He doesn't know how to work this. What's going on with question 3? All right, and so there's the answer. Give me the first case you'd pick. What's the first case we could pick here? Yeah, I think 1 and 0 are both acceptable. I do not accept 2. because 0 and 1 are just on principle. They're the easiest number to try here. There's nothing saying we're not allowed to be 0 or 1. So just do it, 0 or 1. And if we got no further and we got like stuck on this problem, what can I say about the answers now? Just with this one case, knowing that x could be 0. Oh yeah, you can do that. Just with this one case, Leander, we can't say can't be determined yet. We can't say that yet. We just know that they could be equal. And so A and B are out. And so this is how we test cases. Now what do? We don't pick an answer yet. What do we do next? We test a different kind of number. And if you want a good sense of different numbers, there's a couple ways to think about it. Well, this looks like a little dude here now with a smiley face. Here's 0, here's 1, here's -1. 0, 1, and -1, and then the areas between them tend to be the different kinds of numbers. So we want to test something different. So let's try 2. Everyone was going for 2. What's 2 cubed? And what's 2 to the 5th? And so we have one case where they're equal and one case where B is greater. That means 2 different things are possible. That means D. That's when you get D for an answer, when there's more than one possibility. So notice you can never pick things unless you have some other reasoning going on. You could never pick something based on one case alone. You need to check at least a couple to confirm. All right, let's do one more. No, equal counts as a different possibility. It doesn't need to be one greater or the other greater. It's any 2 of greater than, less than, equal. Any 2 of those means D is your answer.
I just want to add something or sort of emphasize something Joe said too. It's really important for these that you take the time to prove to yourself that D is true or that your answer is true. It's similar to the vocabulary questions or even reading, and that making quick assumptions without pushing yourself all the way to that proof can often lead us into traps.
So, Kat, you want to handle this one?
Yeah, let's do it. So yeah, we're going to start with our upfront info, but maybe Joe's going to do the writing for me. Let me see if that's.
Oh yeah, I'm on
Oh wait,
it.
no, I think it's working, Joe. I think it's working.
I don't know. That looks like a really weird thing you drew.
I just made a squiggle to test it, but I think it's going to work. So what are some possible values I could test for X here if I know X is less than -1?
God dang it.
Now it's not working again. I was going to draw Joe with a man bun.
I got it. All right. So I saw a -2. I really like that one because it's a good, easy one to start with.
Yeah. Let's start with -2. And we've done that before, so we can maybe just remember our work from previous problem, -8, -32. So what answers can we now rule out of our A, B, C, D after testing -2? Nice. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm also seeing some people saying X equals -1.5 or -3/2. And that might be a good second one to test because that's the thing that's different here, right? I no longer have that X as an integer, so I can test out things that are not integers. What did you guys find? People who tested X equals -1.5 or -3/2, what did you find when you tested that? Yeah, it still gives us the same trend. So even though it is a fraction, because it is a fraction that is less than -1, because it is a mixed number, it's going to behave for this problem the same as the integers that we tested did. And at this point, I think we've tried a whole number, we've tried a fraction. We don't have any other options left for sort of types of numbers to think of. So we can go ahead and use A. Yeah, Brianna, they'll always have to define things clearly for you. So if it says an integer, it has to be an integer. But if they don't specify that, then you shouldn't assume that it is. Sun Young, thank you. Precise values. So here again, even though we've taken away one of our constraints, we still get the same answer, answer choice A.
Cool. So that was a nice review, and actually I'll come back and show you guys something here, but this is an overall review of testing cases. So remember the big idea here, you got these 4 answer choices. Your first case should be easy, really on principle, the easiest possible one that you can come up with, because as soon as you test an easy one, you've got 2 eliminations immediately. So take those every time. If you can test a case, do it, in either AB, BC, or AC are going to be out, whichever 2 are not that weren't the relationship you found with your first case. After that, you should start looking to test weird. So that's the big principle. You're trying to prove D with your second case. If you can't, if it keeps being the same, you pick either A or B or C. If you can show another possibility, D is your answer. So QC, meaning quantitative comparisons, that's the problem type we were just doing. Test easy, then weird. Yes, zone F, that's another way of stating the different kinds of numbers. Zone F, for those who aren't sure what that is 0, 1, negatives, extremes, and fractions. Those are your different kinds of answers. Different kinds of numbers to try.
Like frozen for that one. Same ones.
Frozen is
it's a real word. Unlike
instead of zone F. Yeah, good way to remember just generally some different kinds of numbers. Fractions, 1, 0, extremes, and some problems they'll say like X is between 0 and 100. Well, you should try out 100. Try out those extremes. They might be significant, and N is negatives. All right, let's move into this idea of algebra and see how that can be used in quantitative comparisons. So try this one. I'm going to send you a poll later. The E was for extremes, LeVar. Give this one a shot. However you want, up to you. Don't, I'm going to put up a poll later, so don't chat your answer in, please. Okay, I'm going to send a poll out and see how we did here. Oop, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay, pull in your answer, please, on the poll, not in the chat. All right, so spoiler alert, you're all correct. So a lot of A's here, not all, but let's see what we're doing here. Who here tried the numbers? Who said E? Who here said E? So who tried numbers? Can you guys, as in like testing cases, like we were just doing? Tried numbers. Okay, what was the first number you guys tried? Let's start there. I love all the threes. I saw a couple of zeros. Again, remember to look at your constraints. We're not allowed to try 0. Z must be greater than 2. But yeah, Z is 3 is totally fair game. And 3 cubed is 27. 7 times 3 is 21 minus 3, that's 48, that's 45. Sweet. And over here, 27 minus 12 plus 8 is 15, is 20. And so A was bigger for this one. And then what'd you guys try next? So B and C are out because A is bigger for that case. 3.5, 100. Oh my gosh. So that's definitely we're gonna need to do, it technically can't be 2, Kyle, so I wouldn't want to try 2 there. 2.5. Yeah, and I'll say we could go down this road, and what we'll find is we're gonna have to do more computation, like if we tried Z equals 3.5. We're gonna have to do a fair amount of computation, probably using our on-screen calculator that you get on the calculator. That's true, Kyle. So maybe you could try 2 and say, it has to be a little bit more than that, and just use 2. But anyway, if we did this, we could do all the calculations, and it would take some time. Just recognize this would be annoying. And what you would find is A is bigger again, and it's bigger by a bigger margin. And so you could conclude, like, I guess A is always going to be bigger. But I saw some people hinting at something. There's an easier way we can approach this, and we could avoid all that. Yeah, exactly. How could we get away with this? Because this just seems like a lot of work, and you got to do these in like a minute and a half or less is the goal on most of these quantitative comparisons. There it is, Govind. So here's the thing, guys. I'll try to explain why you can do this real quick, but basically whether quantity A is bigger or smaller or equal, regardless of what the relationship is, if I add or subtract the same thing from both sides, I'll maintain that relationship. I won't screw it up. Same if I multiply or divide. I'll maintain the relationship. I won't screw it up. The only thing that would mess with this, do you guys know the rules of inequalities? What's the one thing that changes your inequality? Division with negatives. So that's the one thing not to do. You can add or subtract or multiply or divide both sides as long as you do it to both sides, but do not multiply or divide by a negative. Aside from that, we can do that. So I'm going to subtract Z cubed from both sides. How? Bang. I'm going to combine like terms like I normally would. I'm going to add 4Z to both sides. Boom. And we've got 11Z minus 3 on the left and 8 on the right. Let's add 3 to both sides now. We've got 11Z and 11 on the right. And what's the last move? Yeah. Divide by 11. And now you've got Z on the left and 1 on the right. This is a little bit easier. Which is bigger, Z or 1? Yeah. Yeah, I know that something greater than 2 is greater than 1. Boom. So this is why the numbers looked really cool before, those four problems we did, and they were great for those 4 earlier problems. And honestly, they work here. You can still use them, but your goal has got to be, I'm not going to be a one-trick pony. I'm going to have multiple ways to approach problems. So now you've got 2 clear ways to think about quantitative comparisons, and you can use both. Bun drop. Cat, you've ruined me. Ruined my rep. I'm just the guy with who doesn't even have a bun, who's now the guy.
Leandro made my day. So happy.
You can often simplify and then pick numbers if it comes down to that. But here's just a go-to. Simplify first. And you can simplify within. You can simplify the quantity itself. And as you see here, you can simplify across. And after you've done that as best you can, then think about numbers if you have to at that point. Two different strategies now. We've got algebra and we've got numbers, techniques for quantitative comparisons. Let's move forward, shall we? Just when we simplified it, just to make sure you guys are on the same page, the left side was z equals 1. The left side was z after we simplified, and the right side was 1. And we know z is greater than 2. So this is greater than 1.
Yeah, I think it's worth emphasizing that when we use this strategy, doing the same thing to both sides, we're not solving for anything. So we're not saying that z is 1. We're just reducing quantity a to z, and we're reducing quantity b to 1. And then we still have to make the comparison. We still have to check back with that upfront info.
We're gonna see more of this. So if you're a little lost now, hang in there. Try this one. So pretty even split here between A and D. Kat, you want to settle this for them?
Yeah, let's do it. So because we're working on this, doing the same thing to both sides strategy, let's try it out here. If this were an equation, what would I do first? Well, I'd take 4y out of both sides, group my variables, and I group my numbers. I'd add 6 to both sides. How fast can Joe write? Not as fast as I can talk. This is fun, Joe. We should do all the classes like this. All right, so now I'm going to again divide both sides by 2 to isolate y. So I'd say, okay, I've reduced quantity a to y. I've reduced quantity b to -1. I've changed what they look like, right? I've kept the relationship the same because I'm doing the same thing to both sides, but now I have these simpler forms. Quantity a is y, quantity b is -1. And then, yeah, Nijay, you've got it. Natasha, I think I saw Alex saying this. I go back to that upfront info and I say, Gustavo has Y cars. I can't have negative cars. So I know that the minimum value for Y has to be 0. You don't have to divide. I did for the sake of illustration, but it is true that at any point along the way, I could do that plugging in. Yeah, Jackson, Gregory, the GRE doesn't get into that. It would make it too confusing because then you could have fractions of cars. You should always assume Gustavo's a responsible person, hates debt. No, you should always assume things like houses, cars, people. If it would be difficult and or really creepy to divide it into parts, it has to be a positive integer. So I see here, y has to be at least 0 or greater. So y is greater than -1.
Yeah.
And for the purposes of the GRE, can't have sort of indebted cars.
Yeah, and so there's a sense of like how of the games the GRE will play and won't play. They're not going to say technically you could have a third of a student in your class if it was just their arm and head. Like they're not going to play that game. They're not playing like theoretical mathematics as much as like this should make some sense. So when you see that, those integer constraints, hidden integer constraints exist. They didn't tell us why to be an integer, but because it's a car, it's got to be an integer. Or if it's a student or billiard ball. Yep, exactly. You got it, Brittany. So a little trick there, just something to be on the lookout for. So there we go, algebra. Simplify using that hidden inequality. And I'd say this can often be used in conjunction with the numbers, the testing cases. And in those situations, I'd say use the algebra first to simplify first when the algebra looks approachable. If the algebra looks insane, hey, well, maybe just jump right into the numbers and see if that cuts through it. Okay, here we go. Next is using your brain. This should be simple, right? Here we go.
I hate using my brain.
More tricks, more tricks. Try that one. Oh my God. Try that. Okay, even if you're stumped, guess what, guys? You got a 1 in 4 chance in this one. So everyone put a best guess in. Have fun hitting the poll button. All right, so here's what we got. We got more A's than B's. Let's see what's going on here. What do you guys say? How about we start testing cases? What do you think about that? But think about this, guys. Even if we don't want to test cases because this looks pretty ugly, what's one case I could test and at least get some eliminations? I can't test 0. It says n is a positive integer, but I like what you guys are thinking. That would be an easier case to test. But let's do n equals 1. We can do that. And I think that wouldn't be so bad. -1 squared times 63 to the 1, and then 7 to the 1 times -3 to the 3. So the left side becomes -1 squared is what? 1 times 63. So the left side becomes 63. And the right side becomes, what's -3 cubed? -27 times 7 is, if you put that in your calculator, you'll get -189. So even if you're looking at this problem and you're like, I am totally intimidating, what can we say about the answer choices? Not C or B, yeah. If you get one case to work, remember, you should always have 2 eliminations. If A is bigger, that means the answer choice is not B and not C. So you've got a 50-50 shot. 50-50 shot on a problem where you really don't know much more except how to like take something to the first power. So that's pretty cool. Starting there. I'll say beyond that, it's going to get ugly real fast. It's going to be hard to know, hard to follow, and we can see that. Like numbers aren't going to be an ideal way to finish this problem, but still a great guessing strategy. So there's got to be another way. And so some other folks, if I were to ask you what topic is being tested here, what do you think is? There's exponents, cool. Let me ask you this, what's different? The exponents have overlap into another area. Your patience is being tested. That's pretty good. What's the difference between -2 squared and -2 cubed? What's the big difference between those two? Sign. And so when we see things 2n, this is an important thing. Multiply 2 by some numbers in your head. What kind of numbers do you get? Yeah, 2n is an even number. So another way to think of this is -1 to an even times 63 to the n times 7 to the n. And then what if we add 1 to that number? Odd. And so this is a thing to know about exponents. Anything to an even number will be positive. Anything to an odd number keeps its sign. So basically positive numbers always stay positive no matter what. Negative numbers stay negative if there's an odd and become positive if there's an even. So -1 to an even, what does that become? I don't want to hear the number. I want to hear positive or negative. We're going to totally flip into positives, negatives. Yeah, so that's a positive. 63 to anything will be what? Positive or negative? Remember, a positive to anything stays positive. And what's a positive times a positive? Yes. Cool. So the left side's positive. What's 7 to anything? Positive or negative? Let's think in positives and negatives. Positive. -3 to an odd number, positive or negative? And what's a positive times a negative? So we have our left side and our right side. Left side is positive, right side is negative. Which is greater? 7 to the n is positive because a positive to any exponent is positive, Jesse. Doesn't matter what exponent you take a positive number to, it'll come out positive. So yes, a positive is always bigger than a negative, so A is greater. Even a negative exponent. Exponents flip you, so you become a fraction.
Yes.
Yes.
One thing I'd add here, if you didn't see this, and if it's like, whoa, that's hidden there, that's a normal place to start. But there's a lot of little patterns and tricks and things to notice that can save you time. And a great way to start learning these is to put them on flashcards. Like if I see a negative to 2n, or if I see a negative to even, what should I immediately think or immediately do? You can train the habits of mind that would let you see really quickly that this was the way to go with this. But it's normal for that not to be where you start out, for sure.
Cool. And yeah, remember, like, even with this was like really hard to, this is a lot of things with exponents and positive negative ideas and recognizing that it's testing that you have to put together. But even without all that, if we just test one case, just the number one, you got a 50-50 shot. We're going to end you on time today, but I want to show you these three things. Here's a big piece of using your brain. Categorize what they're testing. And I'll just point out another problem from yesterday. Do you guys remember this one? Yeah, the answer was A, Brent. So let's see if you can try this one. Try this one out. For those who were here yesterday, this is your time to shine. Don't chat in your answer. Let's get a poll. See how we do here. Yeah, I delay in the poll, guys, because it gets in people's way if I do it too early. So here we go. I'm going to put the answer up now, the poll up. Let's see what we got. All right, we have a near 50-50 split here for those who voted so far between A and B. Little tear. So let's see if we can figure this out again. I'm just gonna quickly remind you guys. So we have these multiple averages. Let's think in weighted averages.
Well, Joe, nobody picked E, so that was a win.
Yeah, at least no one's picking E on the quantitative comparison.
Yeah.
So we've done a good job, Kat. I
Done
think.
something.
We've got town Y over here, and they averaged 45K, and we've got town X over here, and they averaged 55K. And who had more citizens? So this is what we went in. For those who weren't here yesterday, this is weighted averages was this idea we talked about yesterday, and this is the idea. It can't not if Y and X are the same number of people, the average would be 50K, but Y has more. So we're going to end up somewhere over here. And so two big things to recognize here. So since we're somewhere over here, B is bigger. 50,000 is going to be bigger than any number between 45 and 50,000.
Did anyone think about it this way, but then just flip around town X and town Y?
Yeah.
Get them backwards.
I feel like that's like a cruel thing they did. Like, let's make Y the smaller one and X the bigger one.
Yeah, it's everything. Like every time teach this problem in class, I have to like so carefully remind myself because I'm still seeing it dozens of times.
I'm going to explain it one more time. For those who weren't here yesterday, I'm throwing a lot at you. This is a callback to yesterday, but I'll give it one more explanation. So on the left here, we have Y with an average of 45,000. On the right here, we have X with an average salary, town X with an average salary of 55,000. If they had equal numbers of people, the overall average of both towns would be 50,000. But they don't have equal numbers of people. In fact, we know town Y has more people, which means the overall average will be closer to their average salary than the X's average salary. So we didn't calculate exactly what that salary is, but we can quickly know it's between 45 and 50,000. So, excuse me. Sorry, we're closing up here. I got to finish this thing now.
Joe's in our New York office and they're kicking him out.
It's crazy here in New York. So
that's it, Sam.
Where was I? So a couple things to note. I'll just give you two more kind of how to be reasoning about things. In quantitative comparison specifically, notice we didn't need to calculate A specifically. We could just compare it to 50,000. So remember, compare, don't calculate. I'm going to clear this. So you can cheat off B to do that. And the other thing I'll add is what we were really getting into in session 1 with Quant, which is having a deep understanding of a topic of like, not just here's some formula I use, but I really get what's going on, can often enable these quicker solutions. That's a hard thing to reach, but it's something to strive for, not being content with just saying, I have a formula that works, but say like, but why does it work? How does this work? What's really going on here? And that's what we were pushing for with weighted averages yesterday, and you saw how helpful that can be. So quant strategies, we have numbers, test easy then weird, algebra. Remember that hidden inequality, it's a great trick. And then remember to just think about things. This is a test that's testing thinking, so don't turn your brain off. We got more coming at you tomorrow about study techniques.
Yep.
You guys have been great.
All kinds of good stuff, but thank you so much.
We will be doing more problems tomorrow, but we'll emphasize how would you get better at this stuff? How do you learn it?
Yeah, how to review, timing, things like that.
Mm-hmm. I don't have social media. No homework tonight, guys.
Yep.
Go enjoy yourselves. Go watch the latest episodes of Handmaid's Tale, have fun.
I can't bring myself to finish the season, Joe. I can't do it. I'm rewatching The Office. It's so happy and safe.
That's good.
It's good.
I've been watching Drunk History.
I should watch that. It would probably be a good way for me to like fill in some of my real ignorance.
Okay, guys, well, we're going to end the session. It's been real. GRE at manhattanprep.com if you have like general questions and just want to talk. Otherwise, like you guys know how to Google, just Google Manhattan Prep, you'll find it. It's on the internet. All right. See you guys tomorrow.
Bye.